Okay. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this job searching workshop, job searching during a pandemic. Certainly there are a lot of unique things going on. I'm Rachel Greenberg, and I am the Director of Career Education in the BC Career Center, and I'm joined by my colleague who will introduce herself.
I am Marina K. Eastman, also at the Career Center. I work on the employer engagement team, basically kind of working with our employers who recruit for both jobs and internships at BC.
Great, thank you. So we have everybody muted for the presentation portion of the session. And what we will do is, as we get closer to the end, if people have questions that they want to ask verbally, we can unmute you. But in the meantime, if you have any questions at any point, feel free to ask them through the chat function, which will be seen by everyone. So we want to just kick off by saying that we fully acknowledge that this is a really difficult situation that everybody's in right now, and that everyone here is experiencing a different set of circumstances, which can create different levels of concern or anxiety. So we want to just sort of acknowledge that up front. And encourage you to reach out to our career coaches or to other trusted advisors and folks that you know for individual guidance, especially if this is a particularly stressful time for you. So we'll share some advice here today, but please don't let that be the end of our conversations. I know we do have some students who are joining us from the Carroll School of Management, from graduate programs. And for you, you should really focus on getting that advice from the folks over in the Graduate CSUM Career Center. We are going to share, as is probably obvious today, some search strategies with you all that are tailored to the situation that we're in right now. But keep in mind that most of the search strategies that you'll employ during this time are pretty similar to what we would encourage you to do during regular times. There are just certain strategies, for example, networking, that become even more critical at a time like this. And we also want to acknowledge that this is particularly unique in that everything is virtual, as well as we're experiencing some economic downturns and recession. So there's a lot going on right now. And so hopefully we can address some of your issues and concerns. And just sort of from the outset, we want to say that we want for you to really continue to reflect on what your ideal job or career might look like in the future. And we want you to continue to aim high and to reach for those dreams, but also to think about how you might be able to adjust those expectations and prioritize your needs given the circumstances that we're in right now. So with that, we will move on to what we hope that you will learn today. And talk about our learning outcomes. So by the end of today, by the end of this presentation, we hope that you'll be able to articulate the importance of making connections as part of your job search strategy, that you'll be able to identify at least a couple of resources that you might use in your job search, and that you'll be able to identify at least 1 to 3 next steps for your job search that you can take pretty immediately. So if you could take just a moment to indicate in the chat box, what is one thing that you're hoping to learn from today's presentation so that we can try to make sure that we incorporate that into the session. Okay, so one person wrote finding a job out of state. Great. How to evaluate company culture and offers remotely, virtual interviews, and how to be successful. Great. So keep those coming. We may not get to all of these topics today, but we do have other sessions that'll be coming up. So today we're really going to focus on the search strategies. And we have other sessions, as I mentioned, that'll be coming up that are on, getting a little bit more into networking, getting into virtual interviewing, and some of those other things as well. We have a very active blog that you can check out for information about how to do a virtual or long distance job search that may be helpful. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. Moving on to the next slide. Before we get into these specific job search strategies, we want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what is truly most important here. So that is your well-being, number one priority. It's probably numbers 1 through 5 at least. And so let's talk a little bit about that. We want for you to really consider for yourself what your own stressors are. Everybody has different situations, as we talked about. Everybody has different stressors. Know what yours are and identify ways to take care of yourself. And also let us and others know how we can help you with this. So things like taking breaks from the search can be really helpful. Scheduling time for activities that'll help you to restore your energy, restore positivity. That'll just be good for you sort of mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. And if you do start to feel down and you know, a break or scheduling time for activities is not helping that, we really, really encourage you to seek help and guidance. And we've provided here a couple of resources specific to BC that might be helpful. We also really encourage you to focus at a time like this on what you can control. So much of this is beyond all of our control. And so if you think about what is within your control, you might, you know, feel a stronger sense of that. And think about how resilience can be a differentiator to an employer. So what I mean by that is, you know, everybody is in this situation right now. Again, we have different circumstances, of course. We cannot control what's going on, but we can control how we respond to it. So to the extent that you can show that resilience, that you can show care for others, that you can show care for the employers that you're interacting with or the alumni that you're interacting with, that can go a really long way in a moment like this. So I also, just as a final note on this slide, want to mention that even in the best of times, a job search involves rejection and it involves feeling of failure. So a lot of these strategies can help kind of mitigate the impact of those things on you. Okay, so I will turn it over to Marinike.
Wonderful. So starting with our first strategy, this is around what I call know thyself and building your skills. So the first strategy, again, around ongoing self-awareness and building and developing skills that you may already have. And you may be wondering, you know, why is this important? Well, as part of a strong job search, you really want to make sure that you're aware of what you're bringing to the table, whether that's your strengths, areas that you may need to grow and develop, different opportunities or threats as you continue to look within the job market. I think all of this really helps you bring a lens to what it is that you want to do from a career perspective, as well as provide you a little bit around your motivations for doing so. And then you'll be able to know what you have to offer to your future employers. So what we have here, I'm sure that this may look familiar to some, is a SWOT analysis. So really, again, those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And while we're not going to take the full time today to have you kind of do this, I do want you to spend maybe just a quick, 30 seconds or a minute thinking about what you have when it comes to these different areas of this analysis. So when we're talking about strengths, for example, what are some of the things that you may do better than your peers? What are some other things that maybe some of your classmates or your professors or family and friends have said that you've done better than others? And when you think about some of your weaknesses or areas of development, what tasks do you usually avoid because you just don't feel as confident doing them? Sometimes that could be, for me, when I remember graduating from school, it was around public speaking. Like, there were things that I would just avoid to try and do that. Are there any things like that that may resonate for you from a weakness perspective? When you think about opportunities, what are some external resources or maybe even things from BC in this virtual setting that we're in right now that you could potentially take advantage of to help in some of these areas and weaknesses? And then when you think about threats, obviously we're in the midst right now of a pandemic. So I think this one we can all relate to, but just things that could potentially be obstacles as you're thinking about your current job search. So again, really just kind of taking some time to reflect on these areas with the intention and idea being that once you do, you can kind of transition or figure out where those areas are that you could potentially spend some time working on a little bit more. And this really goes into a little bit around the skill set and the developing part of this. So as you're starting to think about opportunities, so there could be some of you who already know what it is from an industry perspective you're looking at. There could be others right now who are still kind of thinking or exploring. Could be others who thought of one area, but given the current climate, may be looking to pivot somewhere else. So as you're starting to think about some of these roles or spending time on some job boards, which we'll get into some resources as we go through, reading through what roles require, there may be identifiable skills that a lot of the employers may say that they're looking for. And this could really be a time spent where you can spend some time brushing up on these areas. So whether that's potentially languages or teaching yourself certain programming as we have here. You know, a lot of employers that I talk to not only talk about some of the soft skills around being able to communicate, etc., but some of the hard skills that they're looking for of knowing certain computer languages or having, you know, knowing a certain type of programming or a certain type of skill. So I think that, you know, these are some resources that we've included here where you can kind of go to be able to source some of these different ways of rounding out that skill set. Just a few ideas.
Great. So we're going to talk about the next strategy, which is network and connect. And really think about job searching as sort of like a team sport. So this is not a go it alone kind of a situation, which may or may not come as a surprise, but you really do need your boosters, you need cheerleaders, and you need advocates throughout the process. So one way to get those people kind of in your corner is to network. And to build those connections. And yes, this is something that even introverts can do, but it might look a little different from what an extrovert might do. It is really important when hiring slows down that you do as much networking as possible. And why is that? Why is it that networking becomes even more critical of a strategy? So I'm going to ask you all to kind of take a guess. When it comes to face-to-face conversations, one face-to-face conversation is as effective as how many emails do you think? So you can just put that into the chat. We have a guess of 100. It's not quite that high. 15, higher than that. 50, getting closer. 10, 25, 20, ooh, lots of 25s coming in. 35. So our winner will be Carly, whose guess was 35. The actual number is 34. So what we found is this was a study done and reported by the Harvard Business Review. And basically what it found is that people tend to overestimate the power of their persuasion through a text-based communication and to underestimate that power through face-to-face communication. And when I say face-to-face, in this context, of course, we're talking about face-to-face, but virtual, as opposed to, you know, obviously live and in person. So let's talk a little bit more about what that might look like. So we talk a lot in our world about exploratory career conversations, which can also be called informational interviews. And you might have heard it referred to as that more often. The good news is that conversations like this really do translate quite easily to a virtual format. And we have a lot of great resources to support this. One in particular, which we will get into and do a demo of in just a minute, called EagleExchange. But the idea of these conversations is that it provides a format to help you to gather information about a career by speaking to professionals, or often those people are alumni of your institution. You can use this as a way to learn what types of job opportunities and career paths exist if you're in more of an exploratory phase. You can begin to develop connections in this more sort of low pressure type of environment. And again, this can be done through video chats or by phone very, very easily. So what kinds of questions can you ask in career conversations? This was one of the questions that was posed by one of you. You can ask questions about the professional's career field and company, or about their own job and career path, or you could ask them about preparing for a career field. excuse me, you can really ask anything that you're curious about, except for, can I have a job? So that is not a question that you want to ask in this type of situation, or really any type of situation you don't want to ask quite so bluntly, even if that's kind of the underlying reason for the conversation. So we have on our website some sample questions that you can ask, and I provide the link here, but we can also post that link into the chat box here for folks to reference more easily. And I thought it might be helpful to do a little bit of crowdsourcing. So if you have a favorite question that you've asked in an informational interview, please share that in the chat box for everybody on the call to see. So that can be a really helpful way to get some ideas. So please go ahead and do that at any point in time. And as you all write those answers, we'll kind of segue into talking a little bit about EagleExchange, which is essentially a LinkedIn, but BC specific. So we're going to go and do a quick demo of that site. Marinike, should I share my screen? Oh, you're muted. Okay. Bear with us just a moment. I'll share my screen. I have it ready to go. Oh, I think you do too. Okay, never mind. So, now I'm in a box I don't want to be. Okay, so everybody has access to this dashboard as a member of the BC community, to this resource. So if you have not already set up your EagleExchange profile, that should definitely be one of your notes for this session, that's something that would be very, very helpful to do as soon as possible. And then we'll walk you a little bit through some features within the platform. So you'll have your own sort of unique dashboard set up in your own homepage, depending on what you put in to your profile. It will kind of customize that for you. We have then the Explore the Community tab. And this is what I'll kind of walk through a little bit with you all today, to just sort of show you all the ways that you can search. So there are over 4,000 alumni within the system, and that grows literally every day. And right now, I will say we always have an extraordinary alumni community, but we have been incredibly heartened by the response of our alumni community over the last several weeks and how much they want to help you. So know that they really want to hear from you, and everybody in this database has opted in to be available to you at any time to have these conversations about career. So I highly encourage you to do this outreach. Why don't we click on Alex here? And I will show you, so you can do a search. There are all these, I should have walked you through when you're in that Explore the Community, there are all these different ways that you can search. So you can search by their industry expertise, by their location, whatever is important to you. You can also search by their identities. You can search by the types of activities that they were involved in at BC, et cetera, specific organizations that you might be targeting. So there are so many different ways that you can do a search. And so, play around with that a little bit to see who you can find. But if we go back to Alex's profile, you can look and see what Alex has put into the system. And you can see Alex's bio and, what a little bit of information about current and past employment and educational employment, et cetera. So different folks have put in a different amount of information, but Alex has done a good job filling out his profile. And then at the top, you'll see that there's a button that says Let's Connect. So this is really important. It's one thing, it's great to go in and fill out your profile, but it is very, very important that you actually actively connect with people. And if you're kind of nervous about that and you've never done this, maybe one thing that you do is to start with young alumni who might be a little bit less intimidating to you. But again, all these folks are here and interested in hearing from you. So what's nice about this messaging feature is that it provides you on the left with the profile of the person that you can reference as you're putting together this outreach. It also provides you with a few different templates that you can start from if you want to. So you could click on, if you're exploring different career options, you can click on explore on that career exploration tab. It will give you a template, and then you can edit as you wish. And then you can scroll down and you'll see at the bottom, it says send, or you can see, actually it doesn't say this here, but for most of them, or for many of them, it will ask you if you'd prefer to schedule without necessarily sending this initial email. And it will allow you to pull up a schedule that'll pop up on the right here that will allow you to pick a date and then pick times and the length of the discussion that you're looking to have. And if you schedule through this platform, which I strongly recommend, you can then have that face-to-face conversation virtually through the platform as well, through a video conversation. So that's a little bit about some of the features. Again, I strongly recommend that you take advantage of this as a tool, and that you also make sure that you do that outreach and not solely rely on, on others to kind of find you, because the alumni actually, they can't search for students. So going back to the presentation slides, thank you, Marinake. So a question just came in about whether the site will send you an email when the person you contact responds. So yes, they will respond through the platform, but you will get a message letting you know that that's there. That being said, sometimes messages, they should not go into your spam folder, but sometimes that does happen. So I highly recommend checking into the platform periodically on your own as well. Okay, so I'm gonna, we see the black boxes and a strip down the middle. And there were some great questions as well that came in. So hopefully you all can see those and take those as you go out and do those informational interviews. But some great questions that came in that are excellent for informational interviews. Okay, wonderful. So we're back in our presentation. And we also thought it would be helpful to crowdsource another question. So again, feel free to type your responses into the chat. What are some other ways that you can connect with professionals in your field of interest right now? So in addition to EagleExchange, what are some other ways that you might reach out to and find professionals in your field of interest? Just go ahead and enter those into the chat box as well. And as you do that, I will turn it back over to Marinake for the next section.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Let's see. So strategy number 3 is talking about making sure that you're accessing your available resources. So when we're talking about resources, first and foremost, we want to make sure that you're aware of us, the Career Center. As Rachel had mentioned at the beginning, our services are the same as before, just in a virtual format. So whether you're on the one end of the spectrum where you truly are in that exploration phase of trying to figure out what industry or what type of job, or kind of looking at a myriad of different potential industry areas, or if you're on the other end of the spectrum where you've identified an industry that you're interested in, but you want to have a little bit more detailed one-on-one coaching access, we can help with that and anything in between. And just to give you an idea, when you're thinking about the various industry clusters, there are actually 6 different ones that you can pick from. If right here we have a listing of the different websites for each of the clusters, and if you are to go to any of their pages, there's an opportunity for you to sign up or join the cluster, which essentially gives you access to newsletters with very specific industry information. And don't worry if you're thinking about, again, multiple clusters. You can sign up for as many cluster emails as you'd like. And for those of you who are still in that, exploration phase, you can also join an exploration cluster as well. So definitely something to check out. And once you go to the website too, there's some information, again, specific to that cluster. Our website is very scroll friendly. So if you haven't found what you're looking for, you probably need to scroll down a little bit more. But each area or each cluster has some sub-cluster information that has some really helpful sites, links to different professional organizations or resources that could be helpful as you continue to explore. So if you've had an appointment with somebody in our, one of our coaches in the past, there's a good chance that when it came time to talking about job or industry searches, we've talked about timelines. Now I know that this is a very blurry slide, and really the intention is just to say that right now from a timeline, a hiring timeline perspective, a lot of this has been definitely changed given the current environment that we're in, whereas some employers or some industries may be doing hiring now or had traditionally been the spring time frame. Just given where we are from a pandemic environment, a lot of organizations, as you're already aware, have either halted a lot of their either opportunities or are pushing back on dates, or in some cases are just not in a position to be able to offer anything. Now, that may sound like doom and gloom, but again, those are some very specific industries. So really what's important at this point is understanding what industries are hiring now, what industries may have some opportunities available. And we wanted to provide you with a couple of tangible resources that could be helpful as you're continuing to look at this. So in terms of resources, first and foremost, as a BC student, you have access to EagleLink. And again, having conversations with employers, which I've been doing over the last couple of weeks, especially in the midst of this, yes, there are some changes that are happening with some industries, but there are some employers who are still looking to hire for specific roles. These new roles are definitely being posted as they come up through EagleLink. So I highly encourage you to take a look. Again, just be mindful that there are some maybe more prevalent in some industries than others, just given where we are. Transportation and travel industry is not going to be as prominent as maybe some of the larger tech firms that may be still hiring and have some of those more virtual or remote positions available at this time. Again, in terms of different resources I had referenced before on the individual cluster website pages, there are some resources that are there that provide opportunities for you to be able to also be able to explore different industries there too. And then from a social media perspective, again, we really highly encourage you to continue to follow and engage with different employers that you may be interested in. So this can be a way of being able to hear about opportunities before they even come live on their job board page, or just to be able to keep a pulse on what companies are doing or what type of work that they continue to do in this environment and keep up a little bit real time. So definitely encouraged there. And then here we have a couple of specific resources that have come up in the midst of COVID-19 hiring, candor lists, remote internship lists. Again, some of these are more of crowdsourcing resources that can help provide some information about firms that are continuing to hire or some firms that may have some current freezes that will be hiring in future. I encourage you to kind of take these resources with a grain of salt, only because, again, since a lot of this information ends up being crowdsourced, it may not be region specific. So there could be some companies where they're listing that they are hiring, but in all essence, maybe that's for a specific region versus nationally. So it could at least be some help directionally to give you some ideas. But I think when you end up taking those companies and pairing it with what Rachel was talking about around the networking side, maybe having conversations with alums within those companies to just get a little bit more of a clearer picture or a broader picture of what may be happening, that could also be helpful too. And again, there are some really great articles, and Rachel, I don't know if you can list them in the chat box, or we'll include it when we share this after too, but there are some industries and some specific companies, again, that are hiring, that are looking for roles. And here are some two links to some that offer some suggestions around that too. And then last but not least, again, this is not an exhaustive list. Definitely utilize LinkedIn. There are some different hashtags through there, as well as on Twitter, like Get Hired or Hiring Now, that are highlighting companies that may not be coming through these specific resources that are still looking to fill positions. And again, a lot of what I've been seeing right now are around some of those full-time positions, but again, there are remote internship opportunities too. So depending on what you're looking for the summer, definitely check out these available links too.
Great. Thank you. So our fourth and final strategy that we'll talk about, and of course, you should be employing as many of these strategies as possible. As Marinake said, using them in conjunction with one another is going to be even more powerful. But always be prepared and stay organized. And so there are, we've been getting a lot of questions, including in this chat, about whether it's even worth applying for positions. And hopefully what Marinake just shared, encourages you to do that. It's really, really important that you're prepared to kind of take action, and that you use this time to both network and, if you need to update your resume or get your documents ready, that you do that as well, because quick action is also very helpful in this process. So let's talk a little bit about some additional tips in this category. Once you've identified positions that you're interested in, you want to apply, and you don't want to wait too long to do that, although you do want to wait long enough to be able to put together really outstanding materials. So you want to make sure that your resume and cover letter are tailored to each position for which you're applying, and that you've really dotted your I's and crossed your T's to make sure that the details are accurate. That you want to prepare for interviews. And in this moment in time, most, if not all, interviews are going to be virtual. So we strongly encourage that you use the resource Big Interview, which we have available to you as well. And it's for free through the Career Center. But that will allow you to practice that virtual interviewing technique, and you can record interviews. You can record interviews for specific industries. You can watch them back, or you can choose to share them with a friend or with a trusted advisor who might be willing to provide you with some feedback on your skills. So that's an excellent resource that I would highly encourage you to use. We also want you to use some sort of a tracking spreadsheet so you can stay organized through this process. It can be very hard to keep track of all the positions that you've applied for. And so we encourage you to use, whatever your preferred method is, but in my instance, I would use a spreadsheet to stay organized. We actually have a sample spreadsheet on our website, and I can provide to you in the chat in just a moment the URL where you would find that. But any sort of basic spreadsheet that has the name of the organization, the name of the position, a link to that role. I would actually encourage that you actually print out the job description, because once they get enough applications or a certain amount of time has passed, there's a high likelihood that they will take that down, and you'll want to be able to reference that job posting as you prepare for interviews. And then keep track of sort of where you are in the process, when and with whom you've followed up, and things like that. So those details can be really important to keep track of as you apply for more and more positions. And keep applying until you accept an offer. That's really, really important, that you don't assume that, once you get to a certain point in the process that you should just sort of back off all networking and all applying. Keep going until you have something, firmly secured. So with that, we will transition to our final slide, and then we can open it up to questions. But we want for you to really think about what your next steps will be. So we just shared a few strategies, some that maybe you've thought about, others that maybe you haven't, but what are at least 2 concrete goals related to your job search? One that should be an action step that can be completed in the next 24 hours. And that would be related to the search itself. And then at least one that you can do within the next 24 hours that would benefit your mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional health during your search. So we provide some examples here, and we'd love to have you indicate in the chat what one of your next steps will be. So will you join a career cluster if you haven't already done so? Will you reach out to a couple people for informational interviews on EagleExchange? And of course, you can do more than one of these, but we want you to commit to at least one in the next 24 hours. Excellent. So, please indicate those, but we can start taking some questions. So we did get one question that came in that says, for places you've applied that have said that they're in a temporary hiring freeze, how can we politely check in to say if they have any idea when they will resume hiring? So I think one approach to this, and Marinike, please jump in, would be to reach back out, let them know that you've heard the news, that you continue to be interested in the role when they are able to hire again. And express care for other people, because I think those are the little things that can differentiate one person from another. Is if you say, like, I hope that you're doing okay. I'm sure this is a difficult time for you. When an organization is experiencing a hiring freeze, of course, it's really hard to be an applicant. It also can be hard to be in the organization. So just kind of acknowledging that it must be a difficult time for them too. And people might not be feeling particularly secure about their own jobs either. I think, those little things can go a long way.
Yeah, I would echo that as well, just in terms of a lot of the contacts you may be reaching out to on the recruiting or hiring end. A lot of them could be in fear of losing their job too. So I agree that human touch is definitely a plus, and just being sensitive to the fact that we're kind of all in this time frame and not being tone deaf to that. So I still think that, yes, you can reach out, but as you use the words, do so just in a polite and kind of considerate manner.
Exactly. It looks like William has a question, so I'm going to unmute you. Oh. Can you unmute yourself? Because I just lost you. No? Okay. I am going to allow you to do that. So you should be able to unmute yourself now, William.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. My question is, I was not able to get an internship before school closed, and I was still looking, particularly in the business field and particular consulting. And my question is, I have been struggling to find sort of business type internships on EagleLink and just in general. And my question is, does it make more sense now to think more long-term in terms of full-time, or specifically internships for the summer, I suppose?
Yeah. Marinike, do you want to start with that, or would you like me to?
Yeah. Hi, William. What year are you again?
I am currently a junior.
Okay.
A junior.
So right now, yes, it is. I completely understand. Like, there are some opportunities right now that some firms that are still hiring for internships may, especially in the business field or realm, may already be looking at their internships for 2021. So you may have run into a little bit of that too. What kind of field, what role were you looking for, just to get a little bit of specificity?
I was looking to be sort of, an analyst, whatever that may be, one of these firms, and
yeah,
wasn't able to get.
Yeah, so I think that this question really comes down to a little bit of industry specificity. So just recognizing that that was the area that you were looking at. Some of those timelines may have already deferred at this point, but I don't think that everything is lost. So yes, there may be some limited opportunities in EagleLink right now, but definitely check out some of the internship links that we had posted before in the presentation. And again, we'll share that out. I also think that still sticking very close to either some of the alum or like connecting with alum who in those firms that you're looking to potentially pivot into and just like asking some of those questions. So they may have a little bit more insight into what's happening or what may be available, with again the intention being I'm not asking you for a job specifically, but I just want to get a sense of like culturally like what may be happening. That could also be a really good next step too. But at the same time, you may also just need to play a little bit of the long game. I think kind of going at things at the same time. So to Rachel's point, you keep applying till you have something. So it may be a little bit of going down the what can I potentially do now for internships, as well as what can I do to prepare for when I'm looking for that full-time offer for senior year.
Yeah. That's all great tips. And I wanted to just add a couple of things for those, you know, there are a lot of students in this situation, in this position, whether it's for internships or full-time. But again, kind of going back to the earlier part of this presentation, that there's a lot that you can be doing to build skills in the meantime. So if you are someone who will be returning as a student in the fall, thinking about, you know, the value of an internship, of course, is being in the industry and getting industry experience, but it's also about skill building. So how can you still build some of those skills throughout the summer? And you should watch for more from the Career Center over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be putting out some materials that I'm really excited about that I think will really help put some structure around this. So more to come from us, but just kind of also be thinking about, like, there are a lot of ways to have a productive summer. There are a lot of ways to build those skills, to continue to do that exploration. And remember that everybody in the entire world is in this situation. So that's another thing that's unique about this, is that, you know, we are all in the same situation. So you're not falling behind your peers. You know, everybody's in the same boat here. A couple other questions that have come up. So let's take a look at this. Is there a minimum time we should wait to send a follow-up email after submitting an application if we don't hear back? So yes, the guidelines on this, I would say, are the same as would be typical, which would be wait at least a week. And again, in that follow-up, and always follow directions. So if they specifically ask you not to follow up through email or phone, don't do that. You don't want to give anyone, especially in this situation, a reason to sort of automatically put you in that no pile. But, you know, it's reasonable to check back. And the way that you can do that effectively is, once again, acknowledging this is a difficult time. I understand that you must have a lot on your plate. I just wanted to express, you know, my strong enthusiasm for this role, and look forward to hearing back from you when you're able. That kind of thing. Marina K, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, the only addition I would add is, yes, 1 week I think is standard, but even in this time, it could be a little bit longer, just depending on, again, what company, where they are, and just being sensitive to hearing where they are in or how they've been impacted currently in the pandemic, and just kind of factoring that in would also be a good thing. So, you know, it may be more like a week and a half to give them a little bit more grace period too.
Yeah, and I see another question that came in about contingent offers, contingent upon being able to meet in person in the future. That's an interesting scenario. So I would say until you have an offer in hand, you should continue to explore. You sort of have to judge for yourself how confident you feel in that. But I would say, and Marina K, jump in if you disagree on this, but I would say nothing is a done deal until it's a done deal. And so if it's contingent, it's not 100% done. And so I would hate to see you miss out on other opportunities in the meantime.
Agreed.
And I think we might have time for one more question. William, did you have another? Okay, so we'll take that and then encourage people to connect with us separately.
So my question is, obviously BC has moved to this optional pass-fail policy. And my question is, how would employers view a transcript with, in some cases, a number of pass-fail courses, potentially in the fields of discipline that business is in, or that field? Is there any, should we be worried about that career-wise?
That's a wonderful question. And we actually did a pulse check on a couple of our employers just to see how they responded to that. I'd say that most of the employers were saying that from a job perspective, it wasn't going to impact. You know, in my opinion, I think everybody's going to remember what spring of 2020 looked like, and just kind of take into account that all students were in the same boat when it came to trying to transition to virtual classes. I will caveat that and say that if you can, and if you're willing to, it may be a way, if you do decide to continue to do the grade versus pass fail, it may be a way to help differentiate yourself and help you stand out competitively, especially, you know, specific to you, William. I know you were mentioning in the analyst role, it may make sense if you're looking to do those classes that they will that they will be looking at specifically for students in that role as a grade. It could help you stand out versus doing it pass fail. It may just put you a little bit at a disadvantage versus students who may have decided to do a grade. And then the only other thing I would say is for students who may be you know, transitioning into school later on or into a program again where you know, you're looking to do something that's highly quantitative and you decided to do your quantitative class pass fail, again, it just may put you at a little bit more of a disadvantage compared to others. Rachel, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, I think that's exactly right. That's what I would have said too. Great. Thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us. Hopefully that gave you some pieces of information to kind of move forward, but please do connect with our Career Center staff, schedule appointments. Again, everything has gone virtual, so we're accessible to you in many, many different ways, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Stay healthy.
Thank you.